All right. Hi, everyone. It's KK Diaz with the A-Game Business Podcast. And today I've got two good friends of mine from the other side of the world, from Canada. I've got Joe and Quinten, and they're going to introduce themselves briefly. But just for context, we met with Joe a few years ago. Joe, it's about maybe 2 years ago now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was March of 2022. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it was really about international people coming together, to learn how to help businesses to grow, and of course for ourselves as professionals to grow as well. And that's where we met. I then reached out to Joe via LinkedIn, and to cut the long story short, this is where we are. And what's happened since is I've had the opportunity to be on their podcast called The Connectors, and you'll hear a little bit more about that shortly. I guess not only am I returning the favor, but we're just continuing to connect, to build each other, to see how we can help each other, achieve our dreams. And that's exactly why I've asked both of them to be here today to share their story, to help answer some of the questions that you, as our audience, might be having around, your aspirations to not only grow your business, but maybe specifically to have a podcast, which is some experience that I guess the three of us have here. And it'll be just as interesting for myself to learn from the two of you, because, your makeup, your setup is slightly different to mine. And of course, you've done so many more episodes. I want to learn, of course, about the discipline and things like that. But with that said, welcome to you both. I'd like you both to please introduce yourselves, and we'll start with Joe. Once again, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, KK. I'm really excited to be here today. It's been a couple years since we met, as you mentioned, and I'm really glad that we were able to reconnect and now be on your show. So this is very exciting that it's come full circle. I'm nervous. I'm definitely a little nervous today. It's weird being on the other side of
it is, isn't it?
Of the mic. Yeah. I just noticed that. So pardon me if I fumble through this a little bit, but my full name is Jolyn Showalter. And I've been doing the Connectors podcast now with my co-host Quinten for 1 year. And we'll get into a little bit about how we met and how that started. But a bit of my background is that I have been in corporate for 23 years, and that's been my sort of full-time gig. I've moved around in a bunch of different areas, mainly in operations, project management, learning and development. So I have an extensive background in those areas. And truly, I'm just an avid learner. I think I'm an avid learner of life. I love learning. I love meeting new people and growing. I'm currently working on creating some networking opportunities in London, Ontario, here where I live. And that's all come about through the podcast and the people that we're meeting along the way. So it's been an interesting journey, and can't wait to dive into that more. But right now, I will pass it over to Quinten to let him introduce himself.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Joe. Quinten, before you jump in, I have to say you have one of the coolest names on this earth, man.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, KK.
I dig it. Love it.
That's so cool. Thank you very much.
Sorry about that. Go ahead, man.
No, not at all. It's great to be on the show. Thanks for the welcome. So happy to be here and talk to you about all things podcasting. So, funnily enough, I was born in a neighboring country. I was born in Zimbabwe. And then I became a teacher. I was a music and English teacher, and I worked in 6 different countries internationally. And then I was like, okay, on a Zimbabwe passport, I've got to get another passport and another citizenship. So I immigrated to Canada 10 years ago, and I changed completely, and I went from education into marketing. And I've been doing a lot of marketing since then. And then during the pandemic, I went back to school and I did educational technology. So I do a lot of work in business strategy, learning strategy, and marketing with my group, the Design Co-op, which I'm the owner and director of. Nice. And of course, our super important, amazing podcast, The Connectors, which we'll give a link to you for your audience to have a listen.
No, definitely, including my my episode with you guys, because I didn't share it enough around there. I did with the select few, but these kind of clips, these kind of interventions and conversations they never get spoiled, so to speak. You can always learn so much from some of the fundamentals we spoke about the other day, and I have a feeling the same will apply today. And with that said, I think let's go in a little bit deeper, I guess. Podcasting has obviously become one of the best platforms one can kind of market themselves in their individual professional capacity. And then there's, of course, the business and the brand and so forth. How I like to compare things like where the podcast is sitting in as far as the ecosystem is concerned is like, you remember back in the day when we all started having our first businesses and we printed our first business cards. We were like, hey, I'm an entrepreneur. This is what I'm going to use to market myself, and then the next level after that was a website. And then the next level up was a book or whatever. And the next level up, I feel like it's kind of a podcast, so to speak, I'm just using that as an analogy. And with that analogy in mind, where do you both kind of look at podcasts and say, this is where I would place it in as far as if I was starting out or at least trying to take my brand to the next level? Where would you guys place it as some sort of call it a priority or maybe potentially used as a way to quickly build one's brand? Where do you guys place it? Do you still say some things are more fundamental than others? For example, one might say, no, you got to do a website first and have some social media activity, then you do a podcast. But without kind of muddying the question too much, where do you folks, and any one of you can kind of answer and then the other can expand on it, but where do you place podcasting in as far as this digital marketing world of ours is concerned?
Maybe I'll start with this and sort of look at the marketing ecosystem, and then Joe can bring it into what we did. So we both understood that podcasting is one of many different streams of marketing. We've got social media content and posts. We've got email marketing. We've got paid advertising. We've got podcasting. You've got all sorts of different ways of reaching out to people. So we knew that we would have to start with one and get that solid and build a name for ourselves on one of these pillars, while understanding that somewhere down the line you gotta also add other things to it, because not everyone is going to reach you on the podcast. Someone will still want to get the business card or will want to look you up on your website, for example. I don't know what you think about that, Joe.
Thanks, Q.
And I think that Quinten and I are coming at this from different angles when we first connected and met. Again, we'll get into that afterwards. But we sort of did this backwards, I think, than a lot of people might approach using a podcast as part of a supplement to your business. We chose the podcast as our first sort of form of business. Quinten has his business called the Design Co-op, which he uses as sort of the catalyst for the marketing and the design piece that he works on for the podcast as well. So for me, the podcast was a way for me to get creative, to try and experiment. It was a way to learn. It was a way to meet new people and network. And that was the way that I originally had sort of looked at it. And then I had this great co-collaborator in Quinten who wanted to also do this as well, but it was also going to help his business. So for me, I'm actually starting with the podcast to build a business around it. And Quinten's kind of using it to help the business that he already has. So we're both using it in different ways. And I think, the best part of it is that we've met so many people and we're learning so much every time we have a new guest on the show that it keeps creating new opportunities. And we're finding through the podcast that we can create all these other things like Quinten was mentioning, like courses and webinars and paid sponsorships and all those things. And that's all starting to now, those things are all starting to ripple out as we keep going. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. And I may be just asking the same question in a slightly different way, because one of the questions I obviously wanted to ask is why podcasting? Because clearly you guys could have started anywhere else, right? At least as a collabo now, working on the Connectors podcast. Did you both specifically decide that you would collaboratively choose podcasting as a platform to launch, I guess, what you both spoke to? I don't know who wants to take that first. Quinten, Joe?
Actually, no, it wasn't. It really was. So this is where I'll jump into how Quinten and I met. So KK, as you know, we connected through the reinvention program that we were both going to take. Quinten and I both took that program. When I was finishing my program, one of the people that was in my cohort, she knows both Quinten and I. So I mentioned to her at one point, I wanted to create a podcast. And she says, I know somebody who would love to do that with you. And she didn't ask me why, any of the reasons. It's just something that I've always wanted to do. And I knew that it would help with my communication skills. I knew it would help with marketing skills. I knew it would help with like posting on social media, like all these different things that it would kind of wrap up into this fun way to connect with others. And that's sort of how it came about for me. So now again, it's like, okay, we have this great platform and we're now finding other ways to create sort of this business around it. So initially it really was an experiment. It was a way to try something and have some fun. It was a way to meet new people and network and to really up my skill set. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Quinten. And for yourself? Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, I think coming from like a musical background and like a educational background and constantly having assemblies and concerts and things, I'm sort of been very used to walking out on stage and saying, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So welcome to have you here. Da, 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 da.
Nice.
And so like, then when I was doing all this marketing stuff, I was putting things out there, but there's not much engagement. You don't have the conversations, you don't have the networking. And so when Jo approached me and she was like, hey, I've got this idea, I thought, yeah, that's really great. Like I've got all of this experience and I've got the music teaching side of doing the sound engineering and post-production, which you can get if you've got some software. Everyone has a laptop today that has the software that you can get started on that. So you can do it at home. You just got to watch a few YouTube channels and try it out for yourself and keep going. But yeah, it was an excellent way for Jo and I to put our different talents together, and we could really see that we could make one realistic, great project out of it.
You touched on a little bit on the technicalities, Quinten. I'd like us to go in a little bit deeper in as far as that particular aspect of podcasting is concerned. You shared your background. I'm a self-taught sound engineer as well, and I'd been putting my ugly mug on in front of cameras for as long as I remember, because it's one thing to teach and coach entrepreneurs to do something, but if you're not doing it, then you know what it's like. It doesn't look and sound as genuine as it should. So I myself have not been. I grew up shy, but when I got into this world of business and needing to teach marketing, I realized the importance of needing to just do it myself. And I really switched my personality to become one where I'm comfortable, right? And yeah, now and again, you're still feeling a bit of discomfort. But the point here is, you and I have had some background, and I'd like to know what Joy's experience has been. But we've got some experience, technically, sound engineering and the likes. What do you think the experience is like for those people who feel like, oh, now I got to get a laptop with some software on it. Oh, now I got to learn how to edit. Now I got to go watch a couple of YouTube channels and videos. What would you say to people who are wanting to give podcasting a chance? What are some of the issues they should look out for, and where is actually a good place to start? Quinten?
Yeah, wow, that's a really good question. And you can answer it with all sorts of ideas like, well, is your budget $50 or is it $5,000? It's like, it's one of those questions where it's sort of budget related, really, where if you want to, you can record in a professional recording studio at $250 an hour and have the technician finish it for you and send you a final completed thing that's ready to upload. We don't have that money. We're doing this very much on a shoestring budget, volunteer time, volunteer energy. And honestly, I'm using the computer that I would do any of my usual design stuff with or business work on. Okay, I'm lucky. I'm in a country that has Macs, so I've got a nice Mac, iMac. But that comes loaded with things like GarageBand, or there are plenty of free apps that you can download. One of my favorite apps is Audacity, which is free to download and pretty lightweight and easy to use. If you do a couple of recordings using Audacity, like in 2 weeks' time, you're going to see your growth. You're going to see the improvements. I'd also say do the first 3 recordings with the idea that you're going to chuck them in the bin and just use them as a learning experience and an experiment. If you got someone that send it to them and say, hey, what do you think about this? Like, really give me a critique. What's missing? What's okay? And then the final thing would be use some good models. So if you've got some podcasts that you like, have a listen to those. We took so many ideas from podcasts that we like about the style of the intro music that we wanted, about how to break it up into segments, all sorts of things.
Nice. Thanks, Quinten. Joe, and yourself, just maybe a little bit of background in terms of where did you come from relative to the technicalities of putting a podcast together, or even, putting your face in front of a camera. Can you tell us a little bit about that, just to help those who are still trying to start out to see where that not everyone is born ready, right?
No, it's true. And I think this is where Quinten and my skill set came together, like married together very well, because, he does a lot of the post-production. I do a lot of the upfront front end work. So when I speak about front end, that's everything from gathering new guests. So I'm out networking all the time. We both troll LinkedIn to look for new guests. We're always having conversations with people. So I really enjoy that part. I like to connect with people and then find people to be on the show, and even establish a bit of a relationship before we decide that we have somebody on the show. And so I managed that part. I had set up a bunch of Google Drives. The one thing that we do pay for is a Google Workspace. So it's, a few dollars a month, I think, but it allows us to record using Google Meet. And then we also have all the shared drives that we can access all of our documents. So, Quinten and I started preparing project plans, and that was something I did. I used Google Sheets to prepare project plans. We use Canva for doing our social media posts. As Quinten said, he uses Audacity. I also use ChatGPT a lot for helping me support, making show notes. So as Quinten mentioned, there's lots of free tools. I would say, my skill set is I like to be organized. I'm definitely a project manager by trade, and so I do like organizing. I like making sure everything has a place. I like creating, plans and folders and templates. So we have a lot of templates that we recycle and reuse. So it just came together very well. And, Quinten did as much as that work as I did, but we just found a way when it comes to working through a show, we have it all laid out in sort of a playbook of who does what at what time. And how much time we want before we actually have a show episode ready. We have a folder for every episode. So we're very organized, and it helps just with the flow of our process and who's doing what when. We also just onboarded a new person. So nice. She's my brother's girlfriend, actually, and she's helping us do our social media posting now, which has been really cool because it made us go through our processes again and say, okay, how do we onboard somebody? What do they need to see? What do they need to understand? How can we integrate them into what we're creating? And so that's also been an interesting process in itself. I was just giggling a little bit before I start talking, just because Quinten does a lot of work on the post-production, and he had suggested one time that I try it just because we were going back and forth one day, and we were both frustrated. He's like, and it was a good point. Like, I haven't done that side of things, so I don't know all the effort it takes, and I know he puts a lot of work into it. So I think we are working towards our strengths. And when there's two people, collaborating this way, it's best if you focus on what you're good at. Yeah.
No, great. I love it. Thank you. And talking about how organized you both are, you actually put me to shame. Hey, you guys, you've got, you are so on the ball. It's amazing. I love it. So tell me a little bit more about your marketing. How did you market the podcast, the Connectors podcast, and how has it evolved over time?
Like just what I said to you about like when you asked the question about technicality issues, and I said try out your first 3 episodes, send them to trusted people and see what they think, and be prepared to chuck them in the bin. It's exactly what we did. We prepared, we got ourselves ready, we got at the vibe between Joe and I, and we talked a lot. And then we sent these out to some of the reinvention community, and we got back very mixed feedback, and we realized, we don't know where we're going. So we came back to the drawing board, we did a bunch of writing, and then we were like, fine, the first marketing campaign's got to be the launch. We're launching. So we started like a 6 weeks out from the launch. And then based on that, we thought, where are we going to go from here? Okay. It's every 2 weeks. It's going to be with a guest most of the time. So there's got to be like a hype up for the guest. Hey, we've got someone releasing on Friday. So you got to tune in and listen. And here's a little snippet, and that'll sound good, and that'll get people to want to click on the link. And then Friday, hey, we've got this new episode. And then something the week after to say, if you didn't catch it, don't forget, we've just released a new episode for you. So those 3 came together quite quickly. So now we think, okay, we've got a good little package for each episode. But we have played with other ideas as well. What sort of stuff have we done, Joe?
Nice.
And I think the marketing is ongoing. So as Quinten was saying, we really did focus initially on what our messaging was. Who are we as the connectors? What kind of people do we want to attract? We really did heavily focus on that part at the beginning because we wanted it to be about who we are. And I think by nature, Quinten and I are both very sort of fun, jovial, conversational people, and we wanted to connect with others. So that is who we are. In terms of marketing, it's kind of always evolving. And Quinten and I do a review of all of our stuff like once every quarter. So we've already started this process and integrated it into our weekly agendas where once a quarter we go through everything. We look at our analytics on our social media platforms to see how we're doing. We sort of review what's working, what's not working, where is our redundancy, what can we remove, and what can we add, and how can we really hone in on our audience and who they are. And I think that's always a work in progress, right? It's people know who we are, and I think we have our messaging right, but it's constant. I think the marketing piece is constant. So, we don't have newsletters going consistently yet. That's something we'd like to do. And KK, you gave us some really great tips when you were on our show about that. So I want to go back and listen to it again. So when we get to that point, we're utilizing some of that shared knowledge. So the marketing is, we probably could do more is kind of what I'm thinking, but it's consistently growing, and we're always thinking of new things to try for sure.
Great. Tell me about what have the numbers indicated for you? Because I find that because of what our audiences sometimes perceive a podcast to be, because people think because it's a video it must be a podcast, right? When actually a podcast is you got to subscribe to it. It's Apple Podcasts and other platforms broadcast audio-based podcasts in that manner. But nowadays, whenever I say podcast, someone say, cool, I'd like to watch it. And then I always bite my tongue saying, no, you can't watch it. You got to listen to it. Talking about that, do you find that the best way to market the podcast for purposes of course, getting the numbers up, listeners and downloads, which methods do you find work best? I.e., those who've subscribed, do they typically listen to the podcast as they are launched? Yes, maybe not necessarily immediately, but a few days later. Or do you find it's the social media posting and now and again when you do the newsletter that actually triggers people to listen to your episodes? Which one do you find typically works best?
That's a really good question, and we've actually got to go back to our data and like our Google dashboards and all that, because we're doing our next big quarterly review in a week or 2 weeks' time. So it's not the best time to ask that question, but I will, because I can't give you like clear facts and figures and say we had X% increase in this. But I can tell you, based on the last 2 reviews that we did, that it was definitely the social media posting that was pulling people into listening to the podcast. And
I find the same for me too, yeah?
Is it the same? Yeah. And the more engaging, people want to see a video. They want to see your guest talking. Yeah. They want to know if there's some giveaway or a freebie that they can have, something they can download. I don't know, what can you add, Joe?
I'd say marketing too, just like Quinten mentioned, we listen to a lot of other podcasts. I'm constantly listening to them, and I don't think I've done it to Quinten recently, but geez, I was leaving him voice notes probably 3 times a day saying, I just listened to this podcast and they did this really cool intro. Could we try this? So, we're always just throwing out ideas that way. And we've probably pivoted a lot. Like we're very flexible in changing our direction. Like we have our, we know what our North Star is, but we're always sort of working around that in different ways. So, I would say LinkedIn has been huge for engagement for us. I don't know that it's the same for every podcaster, but we notice LinkedIn gets us huge engagement. We get each week we get more impressions on our posts, and more people are liking, more people are saying like comments and then reaching out in the personal messaging. So I find that has high engagement, and Instagram is becoming very popular as well. I don't find Facebook as popular, and we just stopped doing our recordings for our visual recording. So we did have them on YouTube, so you could watch our podcast. But we decided to cut it just because our followership on YouTube was really low. And so I believe we still do short posts, just like for when we have an episode release, but we don't do the whole episode on there anymore. And it also saves Quinten a little bit of time in post-production as well. So we're always just trying a variety of things, but noticing for us, depending on, I think, in what kind of arena you're in, like if your podcast is about, I don't know, something more specific, like a niche market in gardening, or maybe it's on specifically on, or something that's might be really funny, and there's a lot more swearing, stuff like that. Instagram might be your spot. But LinkedIn for us it seems to be good because we know a lot of business professionals personally ourselves too. So I think it depends what your podcast is about, and then honing in on the social media or the types of engagement that are going to align best with that.
Great. And Joe, let's stick with you a little bit longer. In your view, what have you found just didn't work, and you would just recommend people to stay away from some of these tactics, right? Or at least, and not just around marketing, but as you were, working on the podcast, putting it all together. What are just some of the no-nos that people shouldn't even waste time on, at least in the beginning?
The constant marketing people that reach out to you trying to market for you. I would say ignore most of them, because you will get bombarded with people that want to market for your podcast, and they're going to be pitching you constantly and saying, I've been watching you, you could do some different things here, and you should engage our services. But no, I think there's enough that you can do on your own, or pre-scheduling your posts as well. So there are some things like Publer, for example, and I think even in Canva, you can do some things where you can just schedule your posts too. So that is something that's helpful in terms of time saving. If you want to, schedule your posts weeks ahead. And I know Quinten does that for his design co-op. But I would say that would be one. Don't pay attention to the people that are marketing. And what's another big no-no? I don't know. I don't know if that there's a big no-no. I would just say don't spend too much time on things that don't matter. So, just focus on doing a really good show. focus on getting out some content that's of value and that people are going to be interested in. Ask people what they would like to hear about. We were trying some polls. Sometimes that engagement isn't as much as we'd like it to be, but we'd like our poll engagement to increase more. So that's one area. I don't know. Could you think of something else that's a big no-no, Quinten, from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a couple. Like, I like what you said at the beginning of the question when you said if an idea isn't working, drop it. And that made me think, like, at one point we wanted to bring out something every week, and Joe and I were going to bring out a short episode and then an episode with a guest. And after, I don't know, 4 or 5 of these, both of us were stressed out. Both of us had our hours like just overloaded a little bit. Instead of it being something that we really enjoyed working on, collaborating together, it was causing friction between the two of us. Mm-hmm. So I would say, and that made me think of 2 things. So get rid of a project if it's just too heavy. Don't be afraid of that at all. It didn't affect us at all. And then the second thing is watch the work-life balance or the well-being of the team that you're with. Because you got to be in this for the long haul. You can't do a podcast, do 7 episodes and expect success. You got to be in it for, like we said when we started this, we're in this for 2 years minimum, and we're coming up to 1 year. We've got a whole other year of exciting guests and amazing conversations and possibilities. But it's all dependent on Joe and I getting on and doing a really good job.
Nice.
I'd say those 2 things as well.
If this is your only job, it's great. You have all the time in the world to focus on it, but both of us are, working otherwise. So I think just, communicating with your team. If you have a team of 2 or more, it's just staying in communication and being flexible. Yeah.
Nice. I love how much you guys experiment. What else are you experimenting with at this moment? And what can we expect to see out of that from you guys?
Well, we have, we're starting a little mini series, and I don't want to say too much about it. So funny enough, when we just said we dropped the short episodes in between, but we would like to focus on some specific things, because I think one thing Quinten and I notice a lot when we're having interviews with people is that we find common themes. So once we notice these common themes, it's kind of like, well, if we're picking that out, maybe other people are picking that out, and this might be a really important topic. So we have a guest that we want to bring back and ask them if they'll do like a mini series segment on just honing in on that particular topic for maybe 4 15-minute segments. So that's something that we're going to work on. We are working on our website, so it is actually not launched yet, but that is something we're currently in the works on. We are working on sharing free templates. We have a whole sort of reservoir of templates that we put together recently that we'd like to start sharing with our audience as well. So if people want to know, like, oh, here's a freebie template on setting up a project plan for starting your own podcast. If people want to know how to do that, we can share that with you.
No, definitely, we would love to. We would love to share that with our audience. Yeah.
Okay, so we can definitely give you a link to something if you'd like to share that.
Thank you. Yeah.
What are some other things, Quinten?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good. There's so many things that we can choose to do. And one other thing that we're thinking was email newsletters. But we've sort of got to get like you said, we started a bit backwards. So we haven't even got the website up, and it's year 1, and that's fine. It's just the way we're doing things,
Yeah.
So we got to get the website, and then we've got a place to store everything, and a place to send people, and a place to gather information. And based on that, we'll start email newsletters, and that way we'll get a different following of people. We'd also like to figure out a way to make this more of a community. So rather than having a guest and then, they disappear, or we only interact on LinkedIn, for example, we'd love to find some way of making it a recurring thing that we can hang out with all the connectors every month, for example.
Nice. I was actually going to ask something along those lines. Is it obviously sounds smells, like you guys are building something beyond just a podcast. Is there something you can share with us in terms of what does that North Star look like? What is the future? What is the next 2-3 years for the Connectors podcast look like? I mean, I feel like this business is going to evolve very quickly in front of our eyes.
Yes. I think so. And I appreciate you saying that, because we feel it. We feel the energy, the momentum. As the Connectors, and the premise of our show is creating meaningful connections in life, business, relationships. It's really about, like your business, KK, and we talked about this, is you really love to build relationships with people, and it's about community. And we're really creating a community with the Connectors podcast. We care about people and the human connection component. And I believe that creating a sort of a global network is what my sort of North Star is. And I think Quinten as well. We've already expanded our reach in terms of the people we've had on the show, which have been, all over the world. So as we grow and as we create our website, we would like to create this kind of hub or membership or something that is linking all these people together. So if someone needs expertise in one area that they don't know anybody in their hometown or their city or wherever they are that they could connect with, we might be able to find them for you on the Connectors, right? So to me, I envision like this is a community of collaborators. And if people want to be able to work together and connect and reach out, we would love if people would be part of this community. So that is sort of the further broader reach. Quinten and I are also trying to get on more speaking engagements. So your podcast being one of them. We have some ideas of other sort of in-person speaking engagements. We would like to start getting more of our messaging out and kind of make that more cohesive with what the Connectors is doing and the message that we're trying to spread as well. So I think I agree. We're going to keep expanding and growing and thinking of new ideas. And you'll have to check back again, because I'm sure it'll change in another 3 to 6 months as well. So
wonderful. Now talking about, of course, this global community is really about the human connection. What kind of significant impact are you guys seeing that you are obviously enjoying, and it keeps driving you going forward? What are some of these impactful kind of experiences that are taking place within your community that you can share with us?
Wow, I think that's a great question. We've had guests that have been global, and we've also had really local guests to like where Joe lives and where I live. And there've been connections across all of these lines. For example, one lady got in contact with me through arts and culture, and she said, "Oh, we got in contact with the lady after listening to the podcast about the My 911 idea, and I got in contact with her and got it for my grandparents." And so that's like a little personal thing that one person took a step to help. But then we're also doing things like our mini series with this, with a therapist, and she's really trying to go in depth into one aspect of relationships. So I think it's, as long as it's about the human being and connecting with the people in front of us, I think that's perhaps one of the biggest drivers.
Great. And it's just having this ripple effect. I think like Quinten is saying, we're noticing people are reaching out and saying, "Oh, I saw somebody on your show and I'd love to know more about that." I've had that happen quite a few times. So I can connect those two people together, right? It's also helping people's businesses. So I've had people that have, we've had some coaches and therapists on the show, and, other people in healthcare, in the arts and film industry. For example, we had Broad Films. It's two women who started a film production company in London. Well, they're trying to connect people in the city because they're creating a whole bunch of jobs. So, the fact that we could say, if you want to reach out to Broad Films, they're going to be probably hiring for 60 plus jobs in the city, and I can keep an ear out for that. And I'm always thinking about how can I connect people, and another, a name will come up and somebody will say, "Oh, I heard about that person. And could you tell me more?" So it's already happening, this global community. And I see it every week, this ripple effect happening more and more. And I love it. I love it because, at one time I didn't have all these people in my life or even in my purview. I didn't know this was even going to happen. And now it's like I constantly have people reaching out that are wanting me to connect them with somebody that we had on the show. So it's amazing. Mm-hmm.
Oh, great. Thank you. Quinten, anything else you want to share around that?
No, I think like it's just been so mind-blowing for both of us that what we started out just talking to each other through a screen has already developed into in a year, and we're both really excited about the future. Yeah.
No, great, man. I can relate, and I love just how we've got similar ideas. For example, I would definitely love to bring you guys back, and maybe it's a different platform, i.e., a webinar or something where you can literally teach and walk our audience through the kind of steps, at least in the beginning, or to answer some of the questions. So I'd really appreciate it if we can do that. Now, just as we prepare to close this conversation, at least for now. What are some of the thoughts that you would like to share as kind of closing comments with our audience today? And we can start with yourself, Quinten. Anything you would like to add, and maybe just as a bonus or just a cherry on top. Any advice? Maybe somebody's wondering, geez, where do I start today?
You start today with the phone in your pockets.
Nice.
And you comment on something that is happening around you that you feel like other people are going to resonate with, and other people are going to nod their head and go, yeah, I'm hearing you. That's resonating with me. And then you take the very brave step of publishing it on social media, which for many people is the very scary thing, because you're putting yourself out there. You're showing yourself, warts and all, and vulnerabilities and funny accents and whatever's going on, Nice. But it's important to do. It's important because it means that in some way you're reaching out to other people. And that human connection side is important. Yeah.
100%. Great. Joe, and from yourself, any closing words of wisdom?
Actually, I do just want to share something quickly. So there's this book called Together by Vivek H. Murthy, and it's called The Healing Power of Human Connection in Sometimes a Lonely World. And where I first heard about this book was through another guest of ours, Pete Bombachi, and he started the Gen Well Project. We just had him as a reoccurring guest on the show because we're aligning that episode release with the Gen Well weekend, which is coming up May 3rd to 5th. And the reason I bring it up is just because he is a human connection catalyst, is sort of what he calls himself. And really enjoyed having him on the show. And he shared this book with us. And I just want to share this little piece about cultures of connection. Call it a clan, call it a network, call it a tribe, call it a family, whatever you call it, whoever you are, you need one. You need one because you're a human. And, as we know, after the pandemic, it's been very difficult for people to get back out into the world and to really be vulnerable again, to be part of a community, to share knowledge, share a conversation, share a coffee even. And I just want to sort of reiterate that we all need connection. We all need people. And we do cover this on the show, but we also have dynamic guests from all over. And I would just say, it just takes, human connection just takes asking a simple question, asking somebody how they're doing, looking somebody in the eye, and just taking a little bit more care than you normally might by just walking by somebody without saying hello. So we just really want to continue to share that message about what we're trying to do and creating this community and global network of human connection. Yeah.
Beautiful. And on that note, Joe, Quinten, thank you very much for having connected with me. And I do hope that we'll continue, and I trust and I believe that we'll continue to do that and share ideas. And I guess that's what we are actually inspiring others to do, is if you have a message, connect with others, share that message. You never know where it's going to land and make a positive impact in someone or a group of people's lives. And it's also, on the other hand, it's also about getting started, right? And just having the courage to do it, regardless of how you feel, how uncomfortable or afraid you may be feeling. It's always that first step that's going to help you see the light in terms of what the next few steps that follow after that. I want to say I love your hoodie, Joe. I want one. I trust that it's in the I
I
trust that it's in the mail. Otherwise, yeah, you'll get yours from mine as well. Yeah, no, I definitely love one, and I think it's one of the ways that we can truly just help each other's brands kind of just spread out there. I love to see things like this happen. Just from a thought, to a word, and now it's really we living that world of those dreams that we want to see happen. And I know we're all working together to just help others to achieve their dreams. So I really appreciate it. I will ask that you please send me the links. You mentioned quite a few things. You mentioned a couple of apps. You mentioned the book, and of course, anything else that you'd like to share. And then send me those links, and then we'll definitely share them in the show notes. And of course, we'll definitely let our audience know when we'll have you both back on our platform. Maybe it'll be a webinar of some sort, and we'll obviously get those dates aligned and make sure that we continue to share wisdom and to see how we can help people achieve their dreams. So with that said, thank you very much to you both. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, KK, for having us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, KK.
Cheers.